means. Now, this is a big one because it affects you and it affects me. We've had a hell of a lot of experience in this field, and that is education.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there is a $1 billion industry in China, or I should say there was a $1 billion industry in China, and that is the education industry. Like you can see in the background, we're showing some footage here. You can't go anywhere in China without seeing some or other language school or some kind of education training center advertised, right?
Yep.
And it's always been the go-to for foreigners as well who go to China is to, first of all, teach English. But then there's like a step up where I'm sure you've noticed this as well, right? Foreigners that become fairly successful and they want to branch out. They don't want to be a teacher anymore. What do they normally do? You included.
DJ?
No,
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
No, that's, I mean, what they
start their own
do,
training center.
Start their own training center.
You know the DJ joke. There's a
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
the other foreign expert in China.
Exactly.
Yeah, you start your own school.
Yeah, and usually what happens is somebody will, with their wife, with their girlfriend, or, you know, their Chinese, maybe someone they met and they've become good friends with a business partner. What they end up doing is they'll start a little training center. And it's fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you talked about the difficulties of... It's very easy to do illegitimately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You don't need much, right? You put up a bunch of flyers around your Gongyuan. What is it, Gongyuan?
It's like Huayuan, maybe. Like your garden, your compound,
or your Huayuan.
Your neighborhood.
Yeah, your neighborhood,
basically. So what you do is, and I'm just using this as an example, is I know a lot of people that did it illegitimately, where they just kind of, like you said, put a bunch of flyers around, or they just told people about it, and they started a little training center within their in their apartment. They'll convert one of the rooms into a little classroom.
Yeah.
And they make a lot of money. It's definitely a way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You shouldn't say a lot of money. It's not by Western standards, maybe.
But it's like a step up from being a teacher.
Definitely.
You get to run your own business.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, sometimes it's on a larger scale. Sometimes it's very legit, and you get proper. I know people who ran, proper training centers, which are all set up in a nice big office building or
like
whatever.
Huge ones, yeah.
Big on a big scale.
I had max 25 clients. Mine was very small.
Yeah, you had a fairly small training center, but it was a
made decent money.
Business,
it was okay.
Good business. Anyway, there are huge players like Wall Street English and EF and all of that make huge amounts of money. They've got I think Wall Street has like maybe 70 branches, or is that EF? It doesn't matter. They're big. Yeah. They're big. Training, the whole training and after school extracurricular sort of training thing is massive in China. It's like I said, $1 billion.
300 branches of EF.
Okay, 300.
Isn't that crazy?
EF. Yeah, that's interesting.
300.
Wall Street is one of the big international companies that have made it into China. Wall Street and EF are the two big ones. If you ever wanted to teach legitimately and get a good job in China as an English teacher, you'd go to one of those two. Everything else, like Happy Giraffe or whatever else, all a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, this is all because education is one of the most important things in China. And we've discussed this in the past. It's part of the whole family system. The parents and the grandparents will sink all of their hopes and dreams into their single child because of the single child policy. And now maybe 2 children. But they put all of their hopes and dreams, and they want that child to be as educated as possible. Because in China, education is incredibly important when finding a job.
Yeah.
It's more important than anything else. So when you apply for a job, the more education, the higher your scores, the better your education, the better the job you can get.
Can I throw a detail in there?
Yeah.
In America, for example, if you graduate from, Thomas Jones University versus like Yale, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to have more prestige from what university you go to, but by and large, it doesn't really matter where you went to school as long as you got your degree and you did well, right? In China, it absolutely matters where you went to school. If you go to like a crap third tier, tier 88 college, then it's almost like not having a degree.
Yeah.
So it's very important that not only do you get a good education, but you go to special training centers like this that put you in an advantage to get into a better school later, like a better college.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Gaokao, as we all know, is a very important test that happens every year.
It's like the SATs.
And it really determines whether or not you, as a child, as a high school student, as a whole child, whether you get to go to a good university or a bad university or a university at all.
Yes, that is correct.
If you fail the Gaokao, you don't get to go to a university.
No.
Unless you got super rich parents that can send you abroad to study or something. So education is so important that the normal everyday school education just doesn't cut it. All parents will send their children to extracurricular training, and it doesn't matter what it is. It can be piano or whatever else, but they send them for extracurricular math, and during any kind of holiday and on the weekends they send them to various different places, or they have private tutors. This is something that I did back in the day when I was teaching. You're not supposed to do it. It's kind of off the books because you work on your work visa, but everybody does it. Everyone who's worked in China as a teacher has done this before. You get one of the parents will contact you and say, listen, we'll offer to pay you. You come on the weekend to my apartment and you teach like three kids from the neighborhood.
I had bosses. This is personal experience here, so hopefully we can offer you something different than the news. I had bosses that in my universities. Yeah. So I would be lead teacher of this university in control of all the other foreigners, right? And in some of these smaller places. And the whole point was like, if I speak Chinese so I can help them do stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Now, during those positions, because I was in a semi position of leadership, the boss of the party bosses in some of these schools would kind of let me into their little inner circle. And they would be like, we have the expert, he's the top foreigner in this school, and he'll teach your kid for like a good amount of money, like 600 RMB per hour, like almost $100 an hour. Yeah,
that's high.
It's high, but it's because they can also skim some, right? And they can also say like, he's our top number one.
Yeah, sure.
So you actually get into these positions where it's very illegal. Like you're not allowed to work outside your contract. Yeah. But the people in the party will use you, the foreigner, and pass you around, basically.
Yeah, and your boss, it's a weird situation. Yeah. But anyway, the whole point is that children, let's go back to the kids here, because that's who we're trying to focus on here. Yeah, the whole child. They have a pretty dismal childhood, I'll be honest with you, because I would be going on the weekends, going around to different places, and, the kid's supposed to be having some time off, but they never do. I'm in there at the apartments all over the place, teaching kids for a couple of hours on a Saturday and a Sunday. When they're supposed to be having fun, no, they're studying. Yeah. And after school as well, they go directly after school into a training center. So, for instance, back when I was teaching kindergarten, so this was right in the beginning, I'd be teaching the kindergarten kids. And then just across the way, there was like a training center. And I can't even remember what the hell it was called, but it doesn't matter because it sucked. And I'd go...
It was half-child English, wasn't it?
Half-child English. So I'd go directly after teaching kindergarten, finish my day's work, and I'd go over and work at this training center. And I'd go up in there, and then you'd be training different classes of sort of middle school kids or whatever it is. But the kids, they finish school, and even the kindergartners would have their classes in these training centers too. So the kindergartners, they finish kindergarten, and they go have something to eat quickly. Usually their grandparents pick them up, take them for something to eat, and then they take them directly to their after-school training center. So the kids are just being, stuck in this like study regime. It's terrible, and they only get like back home really late, and then they still have to do homework.
Yeah, so I would have kids that would show up. I mostly did adults, mostly trained adults.
Sure.
And
I would hope so.
And whole children.
Yes, whole children.
So they would send their whole child to my school. I only had a few whole children, but they would be the ones that came the latest. You would think it would be the adults, right? No, they would come. And my secretary would let him into the whatever, and I would only want to play games with him at that point because I felt so bad. Because I would say, how was your day? They went to school. They got out at like 5 or 6 or something. They quickly scarfed something down. Then they had piano, and then they had math, and then they had my class. So we're talking about they're showing up at my office like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
And then they're like, teacher, I'm so tired. And then they go home and do their homework.
I know. How old are these kids?
Gosh. Like 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the problem is
10, 12, yeah.
It's kind of like slavery in a way, if the way I used to see it. It's awful for these young children. But, by the time they get to college, it calms down. Like, university's just a free ride. They don't actually have to do any work in university. Like, they just kind of coast through. And that's just how that system works. Once you're in university, you're guaranteed to pass. You don't actually need to put much effort into it. But everything leading up to university is a nightmare for children. Okay. But because there's such a hyper-focus on education in China, these companies that open up, these training centers that open up, make a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Because it is such a big focus, the family will spend a huge amount of money on it because they want their child to have that competitive edge. And that's the whole point behind these training centers, right? So whether it is an English training center or a language training center, those are the ones that we were mostly involved in.
Yeah.
Or mathematics or whatever else.
Yeah,
it
they
is.
all exist.
Yeah, exactly. They formed this over $1 billion industry in China. Okay,
it's crazy.
Now, recently, they said, no, okay, that's it. We are no longer going to have this situation happening anymore. And they basically cut any kind of funding to these things. It's not allowed to be for profit anymore. They're cutting the hours down. These training centers are not allowed to operate on weekends. They're not allowed to operate on holidays. All this kind of nonsense, which sounds good. It sounds like it's good for the kids, but it's actually, that's not the reason they're doing this. Let's go through some of the reasons why the Chinese government has decided to step in and actually shut these things down.
Well, should we say what they're saying the reasons are?
Sure.
One of them is to promote childbirth. Now, how would you explain that? How does that make sense?
It's pretty straightforward. You see, the Chinese government has a demographic issue on their hands. We all know this. Most people know this, that they really are running out of able-bodied, work-age people.
Demographic collapse is coming.
Yeah, it's coming. So they put out this 2-child policy. That doesn't work. People don't really want to have it. So then they're like, 3-child policy. Go ahead, have as many kids as you want. And they're like, nah.
Now it's whatever.
Yeah.
Free for all.
Yeah, just have as many as you want. And people are like, no, we're not going to have kids because it's too expensive to raise. We can't afford it. Yeah, we can't afford to raise kids. And it's really expensive to raise a child in China. Especially with the massive housing costs and all the other crap that's going on. So the Chinese government, in their weird way of thinking, they reckon, okay, why is it expensive to raise a child? I know why, because people are paying so much money for all this extra education. What if that didn't cost money or if it wasn't there? Then they'd have more income to have more children. And that's honestly the main reason behind this, as far as we can tell, is they just want more kids to be born, and they don't want that excuse of it's expensive to raise a child to be around anymore.
And that's not going to work. And this is something, again, we'd like to be more than a headline. So we can tell you something we've been saying 100,000 billion times.
Yeah.
China only does, the CCP only does something until it's way too late.
Well,
right?
That's the... They only do something.
That's what I'm saying.
They
only do something until it's way too late. And people always say, oh, it's great. One of the advantages of having an authoritarian country or a dictatorship is that at least stuff gets done fast, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, the way China operates is that stuff gets so bad that they have to do something that's not even organic. It's not organic to go cancel a bunch of schools.
No.
It's not organic to go, here comes the hammer down. Now we're going to ban after-school education, right? That doesn't work like that. Chinese people are not going to be okay with that. No. That's not going to make them wake up tomorrow and say, hey, we're going to have more kids. No. This is some bizarre knee-jerk reaction that they had in some stupid low-level or high-level party meeting where people can't disagree with each other, and the yes man gets to walk away with his solution that he probably came up with at the last minute, even though the educational minister was probably trying to keep his eye, or supposed to keep his eye on this entire situation, and never did, because he was too busy drinking baijiu and too busy being corrupt and taking bribes that he didn't actually do his job. And this happens across the board. This is how China works. Why else do you see China in the headlines so often? Normal countries, you're not going to see in the headlines very often about government policy because it's boring. It's something that happens over a period of time. It's like steering a ship, right? China, you see these crazy things. I mean, my mom sent me an article about this today. There's no reason my mom should know about Foreign Ministry of Education in China. But it becomes massive headlines because of the most inane, drastic measures that the CCP does when it's too late. They do the same thing with motorcycles. They let the problem get out of control, and then they have to have this archaic ban. The street vendors, they come in and get rid of everyone.
Peer-to-peer lending.
Peer-to-peer lending. Cancel everything. Make it illegal. Completely illegal. Ban people. Jail people. Bitcoin. All this stuff. They have to come up with very harsh ways of dealing with something because it's too late. And oftentimes, it's not a solution for the problem at hand. Just like we're seeing right here. Right? It's insane, and I don't think this is a long-term solution for China, and it's going to have huge ramifications, which we'll talk about right now.
Well, okay, look, there's a couple of things that we have to add on to this. Now, China, for the I should say Xi Jinping and the CCP, for quite a while now, have been trying to get rid of any foreign influence in schools, all right? For instance, banning any kind of foreign materials. And any kind of foreign materials that come in had to be censored anyway and looked into. But now they just want to get rid of all foreign training materials. They want less foreign teachers.
Yes.
You know, they really are trying to close down. And it's very disheartening to see this happen. This is part of it because a lot of these training centers, they hire foreigners and, you know, they've got foreign teachers. That's the appeal. Okay?
Yes.
But now what they've also done is they've also targeted online training as well.
Yeah.
Now, before we even continue with this, the Chinese government comes out with all sorts of new laws and new decrees every so often, and usually it doesn't have any impact. They'll say, we're going to change this, but it's just a face move, and nothing really results from it. But
that's why we've never taken that kind of stuff seriously.
But this time, there are results.
Yeah.
I've been reached out. I'm going to read a couple of things here. Somebody reached out to me. I'm not going to share their identity, of course, because I don't want anyone to get into trouble. But they said, if you need an insight into just how the recent regulations on extracurricular classes are affecting teachers working from outside of China, I'm free to comment. Our company just informed us of the terms of what can be described as a slow wind down to state-sponsored redundancy. Okay. The ban on hiring foreigners outside of China means anyone's contracts will not be renewed. So once you reach the end, that is your lot. He's talking about doing this online teaching. Now, you've got all that, what is it, VIP English, ABC English, all this kind of stuff. And
there's thousands of them.
Yeah, it's become a big industry now where you don't have to be in China to teach anymore.
Yeah, you can teach from here.
It makes sense with the coronavirus and everything.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So it's kind of like you have a Zoom call, but, you know, it's not really Zoom. They now use their own built-in in-house
And you have
apps.
Curriculum.
Yeah, you have curriculum.
Oh, by the way, the CCB watches you when you're doing that.
Yeah. Just so you know. He said they've put a stop to all new trial classes, which were the free class they offered to parents to help them see how the children would react to the online classroom environment. So those have all stopped. So with no new classes and a stop to the hiring process of new teachers, the goal is to work through all the ongoing classes until all the individual courses are completed. Okay, and then that's just going to be the end of it. He says, I've been working for this company since XYZ. I don't want to give out his details, but some veterans have been teaching with them for 7+ years. They've seen all the iterations the courses have gone through, from the ad hoc Skype Zoom calls to the more recent version of using an in-house developed app. Mm-hmm. Not all of my students were middle-class kids, but quite a few were. One of them I recently learned is actually the son of a diplomat. And he said, I forgot to mention that 2/3 of the staff at the Beijing headquarters have been laid off over the past few days. So the company is down to only those who need to keep things running for as long as possible. So
they're ramping down.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's from the online teaching and, of course, the headquarters there as well. I've got other friends who teach for training centers and stuff who've been sharing, and I can't share this information with you on the screen, but they're sharing WeChat posts from their bosses saying that, sorry, we're cutting all the foreign classes out. We're, going to cut your hours down to XYZ, or we're just not going to have, classes.
They're getting rid of a lot of the foreign teachers.
It's insane. They've basically told private businesses that you have to become non-profits. You cannot be for profit anymore. You're not allowed to have foreign teachers anymore. A lot of them you can't hire any more foreigners. So it's actually having an impact. And this always happens with Chinese laws and regulations. It's always a it's a hearsay thing. It's a weird situation.
It's a bit of a Limp Bizkit situation.
Yeah, exactly. What you have to do is you actually have to know people and talk to people, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, look, our training center just closed this. You can never really get a clear picture of it.
You're giving me like PTSD about thinking about how never knowing what the policy actually is.
Yeah, and so what we can tell you anyway, from our point of view, knowing people who've reached out to us and people that run training centers and so on, is that it is real.
Yeah.
And that it is affecting jobs. There are millions of jobs on the line here across China. Not only that, but things like investments, foreign investments. This has been a big sector for foreigners to invest in, is this whole, the whole tutoring and training center thing. So, a lot of foreign investors are now out of money. Their stocks have dropped drastically because of this new law coming into effect. Again, a big warning. Don't invest in China. don't do it unless you're 100% sure you know what you're dealing with, because the laws can change like this. I'm pretty sure a lot of people that were investing money in these training centers and things didn't expect that all of a sudden they would be made redundant, you know?
No.
So it's getting to a point where it's pretty crappy, and it's going to be bad for the kids too, because, you know, this is not going to put an end to it.
No. We're gonna see a massive gray market open up.
Yeah, a black market.
A black market. So we had some theories here. You'll see China often do things to get around. Like, for example, when they started selling sex toys, right?
Yeah.
The government didn't want to outwardly ban sex toys because there's a huge sex toy industry in China, and they have all these expos and stuff. And there's factories at the wazoo.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you're making a ton of these, let's say, dildos or something, right?
Right.
That you're exporting to the West. There are a ton of them that don't make the cut that you could sell domestically, right? So the right palms were greased, and they never ended up getting banned. However, they didn't want them out in the open, right? So that, you know, originally what was called a sex shop is now called like an adult shop, and it has to have a curtain and stuff like this.
Qingren Yongping.
Yeah, or
it just means like
Yongping,
tools for lovers, basically.
Yeah, tools for lovers.
Yeah,
I've seen Chengren Yongping as well, which means like adult tools.
Right.
Anyway, so you'll see ways around that. Now, that's one that was done successfully. This has been a full-on ban.
Yeah.
So what this is you're going to see people. We came up with a funny one that might not be far-fetched, but you'll have a foreigner that is teaching you how to play accordion instead, right? And it's like a music lesson class, right?
Yeah.
That somehow is like allowed. But what you'll see is the accordion is in the corner, and then actually there's a desk, and they're just teaching English.
Well, there's some people that run training centers. They've been joking around about how what they'll probably end up doing is setting up a dance class or something, but it's all taught in English or something like that to try and get around it. You will get this. Don't forget that there's a lot of sort of black market training going on anyway. Like I mentioned, those private classes that I used to teach.
Yeah.
That's not on the radar anywhere.
No.
I got paid cash in hand.
Me too.
You know, you go to someone's apartment. They're not coming to your apartment, so you may as well just be like a guest coming around for tea, you know. How do they know? So that's still going to thrive. There's still going to be ways. The problem is it's just going to make things a lot more expensive for the parents now, because now they're going to have to pay extra because the demand's going to be higher. Because think about it, if there's no longer a training center for them to send their kids to, they want to hire a foreign teacher or any kind of teacher to come in. Math teacher. It could be a local Chinese teacher, professor, whatever. That person's going to be in so much demand around that neighborhood that he's going to be able to charge a very high price. You know, so you know, a lot of what I used to do as well. You'd go and one of the parents would set up in their room and have all the kids from the neighborhood come, and you'll have that kind of thing going on. But it'll be in so much demand that it's going to end up being more. It'll have the opposite effect of what they want. It'll end up costing the parents more money to educate their children, because that whole I don't know how to put it, but that whole thinking and that whole culture of putting so much emphasis on your child's education is not going to go away.
No.
So they're just being dumb, as usual.
Now this is also a huge symptom of something much bigger, and this is probably what you won't read in the headlines. This is a sign of China closing down. Now, what Winston talked about is probably not going to be successful, full on successful. We are seeing actual ramifications of this law, but. Throw the gray area stuff aside. This is actually just a symptom of China closing off more than it already was. China is now in a period of actually just shutting down to the outside world. I genuinely believe we're going to see going forward that China does not go into another period of opening up and gradually closes down more and actually shuts out the rest of the world. Unless it's some Belt and Road Initiative countries that are being friendly to it. So this is another symptom of, hey, we don't want you here anymore, foreigners. And we've been saying this for maybe 2 years now, but this year especially, I really, really would advise against considering China for employment if you are a foreigner. Things are just going to get worse, and the xenophobia is going to go up, not down. There is not, despite what the CCP's propaganda says about wanting to be an international player and understand the world, that is not what's happening in China. It's the opposite. And it's actually having an effect on another law that you won't read about in the news. So we found some documents from the Shanghai Education Board.
Yeah.
And Shanghai is kind of, I mean, I guess you guys know what Shanghai is.
It's the most
but-
international city of China. It's, you know, it's called the Pearl of the Orient, or, you know, it used to be called the Whore of the Orient. It's had many different names, but whatever. We all know that Shanghai has always been the most sort of international, most cosmopolitan, most sophisticated city of China. And even to this day, when you watch Chinese TV, they like to glamorize the 1930s and, you know, like what it was like back then.
Yeah, there's a little bit of lore, CCP lore for you guys out there. The Shanghai faction, it's called.
Yeah.
And the Shanghai version, or the faction of the CCP, is very much in like, let's let corruption go rampant and capitalism, whatever, that's fine.
Sure.
We'll let the people kind of do what they want. That's Jiang Zemin.
Yeah.
His
Jiang
faction.
Zemin,
Yeah, the guy
zombie
the guy that's very, very old. He's my favorite CCP
Yeah.
leader just because he's such a character.
Yeah, you'll recognize him. He looks like a frog.
Yeah, and he speaks English.
Yeah.
You'll see him on YouTube in old Mike Wallace interviews and
Sure.
stuff. But anyway, so the Shanghai faction is very much opposed to the Xi Jinping faction, the current faction that's in power. They're quite pro-capitalism and stuff. They're not by no means saints, by the way.
Sure.
Just throwing that out there. But the Shanghai faction has made Shanghai kind of the place that's different than the rest of China. Yeah, it's in mainland China, and yes, if you were like me or you wouldn't be safe in Shanghai. The national law still affects there.
Sure.
But by and large, people get away with more in Shanghai than they would in other parts of China.
Yeah, and it's really a different place. It's very different to
Yes.
most of China.
You don't feel necessarily like you're
That's-
full on in China.
It's kind of like New York is not
Right.
representative of America.
You wouldn't say, "Oh, I've been to New York City." It's just like Texas
Or
right?
Arizona.
or Arizona or
Yeah,
something, right?
Exactly.
So we found these documents, and actually, what they're saying is that in primary school,
Yeah.
in elementary school, for you Americans out there, they are going to institute Xi Jinping thought as
Yeah.
part of the curriculum.
Must be.
And I actually I was talking to Winston about this. I don't think most people are going to react like too crazily about that, but you have to understand what the implications of this are.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what Xi Jinping thought is, we'll go through the 14, like just very summarize it for you. But, you know, this is a problem with these kind of dictators and these crazy personality cults, is you get someone who comes along who suddenly thinks that his thought is now something that everybody must follow. I mean, think about it. Mao Zedong had his little red book. Everybody had to carry around this little red book, which I'd wave around like this, and it has like quotations and poems and stuff of Mao Zedong.
Xi
Gaddafi,
Jinping has his app.
yeah, Xi Jinping has an app. Gaddafi had his little green book.
Correct. Exactly the same.
And it's just a bunch of ramblings of a crazy madman who's drunk on power, and he needs his citizens, and everyone else must follow him. And, you know, they did. If you look at Mao Zedong, how he whipped everyone up into this like fever, and they all used to carry around his red book and worship him and worship this book. This is what Xi Jinping wants. Now,
Correct.
if you are a government employee in China already, you have to take a test all the time to see if you know Xi Jinping thought properly. You have to do this thing on your phone. It's like
So
an
many
app.
people cheat.
Yeah, they cheat. But every day you have to, you know, read the Xi Jinping thought. You have to do it.
Back then, when I used to go to, I often go to Chinese government websites to find material for us. And before, it would be like this commie shit that you would always see with the
usual
doves flying
nonsense,
around,
yeah.
hammer and sickles. But now, on a lot of these, it says Xi Jinping thought, and it has Xi Jinping clapping with the clouds. And it precedes everything that you
Yeah.
read.
He is becoming the most important thing in China.
Yeah.
Well, he is the most important thing. And
More important than communism.
Yeah, than the party or
Yeah.
anything. He is, and his thought, it's almost like he's trying to elevate himself to the level of a godlike, you know, being.
Absolutely.
Which is
that's
what,
the cloud imagery and stuff.
and that's what you found with Mao Zedong and what you found with tons of other dictators in the past.
I didn't see Xi Jinping thought stuff pop up in China in like even at the beginning of his leadership.
Yeah.
I saw it pop up towards like
The
the end of
end.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I started seeing it more in 2017 and 2018.
Yeah, in 2019 is when
Definitely,
when
like,
I noticed in my neighborhoods and stuff more of the communist symbols
Yeah.
and more of the like what you see in the background.
We started getting it in 2017 and where I lived.
Yeah.
Just they usually start out in smaller places.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, you'll see a lot of the banners about Xi Jinping thought and stuff, and this is the English translation.
Why do
of
they
Xi
have to
Jinping
have
thought.
like the Shijiao Da? Why is it always going to be like the 19 big this? It's always, oh, whatever.
It's always like the 4 big principles, the
Yeah.
6 bads.
Yeah, exactly. The
Strike down the 2 evils.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go through these 14. We'll read them to you and try to give you an explanation.
Yeah, so the 14 principles of Xi Jinping thought, and this is, again, so you can get an understanding of what the principles of this are.
Now,
this is
of
doctrine.
course, this is what children have to learn now in middle school in Shanghai and everywhere in the country.
And this is replacing things like English, right?
Yeah.
There's no, I forgot to bring this up.
Yeah.
They're actually getting rid of the English final exam for the primary school students. And they're
Yeah.
starting this in Shanghai. That's a big deal because
Yeah.
you're telling the world we don't want to be part of the international community anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to focus on English.
They're terribly worried that through the language, the ideas and the thoughts of the Western world might, permeate the minds of the children. You see,
I mean, you already had a huge problem with English level. Like, oh my gosh, don't even get me started on China's like their English aptitude tests that actually they get into international statistics with this somehow that ranks them higher than like Taiwan. Can you tell me who has better English, China or Taiwan? I mean, it's
of course Taiwan, but it's crazy. What they do is they say China has the largest amount of English speakers in the world, which is true because of the population.
Yeah.
But when you say English speakers, you're talking about people that can say, "Hello, my name is."
Yes, there are people that speak good English.
Absolutely.
But by and large, China's English program is way below most other countries I've been to.
Most Chinese people that I know are fairly good at reading and writing
Yeah.
English because they have that rote memorization
Right.
and that's how they learn. But when it comes to spoken English,
Speaking,
it's
not confident
it's a
stuff.
huge issue. And no one can ever try to pretend that China has a good aptitude of English
No,
because
but
we
they
have
do-
traveled around the entire country.
Right.
And if we couldn't speak Chinese, we would never be understood wherever we went.
No.
The only place people speak English to any level of like normalcy that you could consider to be kind of on an international level are in places like Shanghai and Beijing.
Yes, and what I wanted to say is the countries that have this English aptitude survey, right,
Yeah.
that go into this ranking, they test the whole country.
Yeah.
You know what China does? They test like a city in Zhejiang
Yeah.
and like Shanghai or so. They hand pick these parts,
Yeah.
and like this represents our entire country, and it's like the elite schools of these areas.
It's crazy.
Anyway, so these are the 14 principles of Xi Jinping thought. This will be taught to every child.
Yeah, and obviously
from primary
in depth.
school.
We're just going through
Yeah.
the headings of these. So the first one says, ensuring Chinese Communist Party leadership over all forms of work in China.
You have to understand, this is the doctrine
Yeah.
of current China.
Yeah.
Not make money, not let's get rich together, not let's all be happy and
Ensure the Chinese Communist Party leadership over all forms of work
all
in China.
forms.
You read the second one.
The Chinese Communist Party should take a people-centric approach for the public interest. What does that even mean?
I don't really know. A people-centric approach. So I guess they're trying to say the Communist Party is for the people,
Of course, the
that
People's
type
Republic
of
of
thing.
China.
Yeah. Okay, the third one. The continuation of comprehensive deepening of reforms.
So some of the reforms, this is an issue.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping is alluding to this idea. This gets pretty deep, but it alludes to the fact that under Deng Xiaoping, which is the leader after Chairman Mao, under Jiang Zemin and under Hu Jintao, there was a necessary period where China needs to get wealthy and just experiment with capitalism, right? And this is always the fear is that, well, I was going to say that the thing that made people so excited about the future of China is that they thought they'll stay in this period forever. And because of capitalism, because of freedom, because of wealth, they'll break out of it and democratize and liberalize. Right. The problem is in the Constitution of China, it's always been, we're going to play with money for a little while.
Yeah.
And then when we get to a certain level, we'll go back into Marxist socialism. Yeah. And the deepening of reforms, this is what Xi Jinping thought is that we've already done that experimental period.
Yeah.
And you'll see this later in the in the 14 principles. But Xi Jinping had to declare victory over poverty so he could officially say, we've done that part.
Yes.
We don't need to get any richer anymore. The Chinese dream is to be moderately prosperous, not rich. Yeah. And now we can go into a hardcore Marxist socialist system.
Now we can reform into the bad stuff. That's kind of what he's going for. Anyway, the next one is adopting new science-based ideas for innovative, coordinated, green, open, and shared development.
And that's why you see so many green lies in China. They have to do it. It's in Xi Jinping thought. So there's actual departments of the government that will go out there and actually adhere to a certain principle. And one of those is we have to be the world leader of green technology.
Meanwhile, they're opening up more coal power plants than anywhere else in the world, outputting more carbon into the atmosphere than ever before. And more than all developing countries combined. You know,
Right.
It's ridiculous. But for some reason, these morons out there on the internet keep saying,
Yeah,
look
thank
at,
you for
look-
bringing that up.
Look at China with its great green initiatives.
Yeah.
It's so much better than the US. It's so much better than...
What are you talking about?
It's bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors. They keep saying, look,
Quite literally.
we are doing... Yeah, it's a lot of smoke. Yeah,
And a lot of mirrors that look like
no, they use the
solar
mirrors for the
panels.
solar panels, yeah. They say, look, what we're doing, we're having all these green initiatives. We have all these great plans that we're doing, and we're doing this and doing this. But what they don't say is that, yeah, we may be doing all this stuff, but at the same time, we're also destroying the environment in an astronomical way.
Non-reversible way.
Completely. So they're not actually better at anything. They're worse when it comes to the environment.
In the worst way
just-
you can think.
You have no idea. If you look at the actual data, rather than listening to these stupid
Yeah.
fluff pieces, oh, look at this great solar farm, look at this great, planting trees thing or whatever. If you actually look at the damage that they're doing, it far, far outstrips any of these programs. And all these programs are badly implemented anyway, and they're not to the benefit of anyone, really. You
No.
know, it's ridiculous what they're doing.
I had an argument the other day with someone. I think I brought this up last time, but was arguing with someone about this, and they were like, "Well, the U.S. is getting worse with carbon emissions, whereas China is becoming a leader in reduction." And I literally look up the graph. You can look up the gosh darn graph.
Sure.
And China is off the gosh darn charts,
Yeah.
whereas America is receding and
Yeah.
actually becoming carbon conscious. So
Yeah.
what doesn't matter where you stand on that issue. China's getting worse at carbon, and America's getting better.
Yeah.
It's empirically proven.
Well, and Europe and all that too. you
Of
know.
course, I just
So-
said it just based on that argument. Right?
Yeah, I got you.
So the next one is following socialism with Chinese characteristics, with people as the masters of the country. Now
Select a few people.
that's the joke, right?
Yeah.
Now socialism with Chinese characteristics, for those of you that don't know, is we are the Communist Party of China, right? But we're just going to be an authoritarian capitalist society because all the commies will be like, what the hell? Like, why are
Yeah.
you guys using free market
Yeah,
capitalism?
why are you buying LV bags and stuff? What's going on?
So the Chinese characteristics is actually, we're going to be socialists, but we're not going to give you any social programs.
Yeah.
But we'll still have full authority over your life.
Yeah, we're going
That's
to be
what that
communists, but
Yeah.
you're not actually going to get any benefits of communism.
My favorite are these
Yeah.
TikTok propagandists. A lot of tankies and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese propagandists, like the actual Wumos.
Yeah.
And what they'll say is, how dare people call China communist? We're not communists. We can go buy stuff. We can do this. It's like, dude, your party is called the Communist Party
Sure.
of China.
Sure.
You can't get around that.
I mean, at the end of the day, whenever you see this with Chinese characteristics thing, it's just an excuse.
Yeah.
All it means is we're going to do whatever we want, and we can change things up. We're not going to adhere to anything. We
No.
just do whatever we want, and if you complain about it, we'll just say, well, it's because it's with Chinese characteristics.
Correct. Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's kind of like Olympics of Chinese characteristics or something.
Correct.
Okay, so what's next? We have governing China with rule of law. Okay, yeah, but I mean, still, this is Xi Jinping's thought. What a thought to have! Imagine governing a country with rule of law. I mean, the fact that it's a thought means it's not a reality. Okay, it's just, I would like China to be governed by rule of law.
Yeah.
That's my thought. This is what we have to teach kids in school because it's not a reality.
The reality is they oftentimes say things.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, it's projection for what you don't do.
Yes.
There is no rule of law in China. There's no independent judiciary.
No.
So you can't have a rule of law.
No.
It's whatever the party says.
Yes, if they want you to be guilty, you're guilty, and you can't fight that.
That's not a rule of law.
No, you hire a lawyer, they get put in jail too.
Yes, to be a lawyer in China is horrifying.
It's just, why would anyone even try?
And people do.
Yeah, I don't know why.
They're like the first scapegoat of any problem.
It's the worst.
Next one is practice socialist core values. Those are those are our favorite. We should have put up.
Oh,
a
we should have
picture.
put those up. Socialist core
I'll
values.
just- I'll pull
yeah,
them
you
up.
can pull them up. Yeah, we'll read through those very quickly. So practice socialist core values, including Marxism, communism, and socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Meaning
Again.
none of those things.
Yes.
Just authoritarianism.
Okay, here are the core socialist values that China puts up. And you
And
see
you'll see
these
these
signs.
everywhere.
We've got footage of these
Yeah.
signs. They're all over the place, like train stations and stuff. So what are they?
The first one is prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is democracy.
So wait, democracy is a core socialist value?
Apparently, when you're a 9 out of 100 and ranked like the third lowest in the world for freedom,
I just didn't think it was a core socialist value.
apparently a core socialist value is democracy.
Yeah, okay.
Civility,
I like that.
harmony, of course.
It's all got to be about social harmony. Yeah.
Hexie.
Yeah.
Hexie is like the go-to. Harmony is the go-to Chinese word for the Communist Party.
And if you disrupt that harmony, you go to jail. So that can mean anything.
Yeah. Next one is freedom.
Okay.
Equality. Justice. Well, equality unless you're only a Han majority.
Yeah.
Definitely not if you're a minority.
Yeah, if you're a man in the Communist Party.
Yeah. Justice. Rule of law. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Patriotism, dedication, integrity, and friendship.
Super friendly country. We've seen that recently.
Very, very friendly. So that's in there.
So practice core socialist values, including Marxism, communism, and socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Right.
Okay. Next one is
Improving people's livelihood and well-being is the primary goal of development.
improving people's
That's a quote, by the way.
It's a quote,
from Xi Jinping.
from Xi Jinping. Improving people's livelihood and well-being is the primary goal of development.
Let me think about that for a second. That's definitely not common sense.
No.
That is definitely an abstract thought. I'm glad he came up with that.
Yeah, exactly. Next one is coexist well with nature, with energy conservation and environmental protection policies, and contribute to global ecological safety. That is the worst thing for China to be saying. I'm sure we all know what's been going on with the flooding, and that's due to the bad damming practices when it comes to diverting rivers. Mao Zedong himself was the one who said we must conquer nature. He killed all the sparrows. Look at
That attitude exists today.
Yeah, look at what's going on with the illegal fishing fleets, which are, of course, state-sponsored and condoned. It's like a militia that go out and destroy the Earth's oceans. Look at the way wildlife is treated in China. This is just saying something for the sake of saying it. This has got nothing to do with what actually happens in China. It really annoys me because when it comes to actual environmental protection and the fact that, okay, there are no animal abuse laws in China. There are none. No. You can beat your dog to death, set it on fire in public, and you will have nothing done to you. So how is this coexist well with nature shit? Where is this coming from? It's not a Chinese.
This isn't Xi Jinping thought. It's Xi Jinping's lie.
This is ancient Chinese thought.
Yes.
And that's the thing. The ancient Chinese wouldn't dam up the rivers because they would create reservoirs and dams, but they wouldn't divert and damage the rivers because they believed in nature and balance and harmony. And somewhere along the line, things went terribly wrong, and you've got Chairman Mao destroying things and Xi Jinping following on. Okay, so what's next?
And again, some people might play devil's advocate and say, hey, at least Xi Jinping is trying to get back on track. No. The domination of nature and all of the Maoist principles that made Mao who he is what Xi Jinping's doing again.
Look, they're building new dams, starving other countries of water, like Vietnam, etc.
Ramping up fossil fuel output.
Yeah, it's not good. This whole harmony thing with nature or something is a bunch of bollocks. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, which of course is what you'd expect. But this is Xi Jinping's next thought, guys. What did he think?
What do you think it might be? Well, it's strengthen the national security of China. And this is the one that it's very important for you guys to understand because this is the one that made us super nervous. And I say this because under the other leaders of China, sans Mao, this aggressive mentality, at least there was a facade of China is always going to be a peaceful country.
Yes.
China's, we do our own thing, and yeah, you might disagree with the way we do things,
yeah,
but we will never be an aggressor. And as a foreigner, you could actually almost believe that. To be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of military presence. There wasn't a lot of focus on...
And they're constantly building up their military and stuff.
Yeah, but not like they are now.
No.
And now... the optics are on. We are a military country, and we're going to F you up.
Yeah, right? We're going to have raps,
We're going to have raps with the PLA. And the reason I say it concerned us was because the national security of China is where the paranoia came about.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping brought about the SWAT team. They brought about the detectives that would follow us around. They brought about the minders. Yeah, we always had minders by law, but it was very lazily done.
Sure.
Under Xi Jinping thought, the national security of China means that we are now constantly watched in anything we do, and we're not even doing anything wrong.
Journalists are being expelled, that kind of thing.
That's national security. It's actually just should be called.
So is this whole thing that they're getting rid of, the foreign teachers. And,
Correct.
Checking English and getting rid of all foreign materials that are, for teaching and things.
Right. And I would relabel number 10 called strengthen national security of China. I would actually call it strengthen the national xenophobia and paranoia of China.
Yeah, that's true. All right, number 11 says...
This is important.
The Chinese Communist Party should have absolute leadership over China's People's Liberation Army. Okay.
This is a bit of a, let's say, a good and a bad, because the People's Liberation Army is so powerful, and the generals they wield so much more power than a lot of CCP officials do, that it would, they're chomping at the bit to have a war. They're chomping at the bit to actually get into some military conflict, because think about it, you could amp up your budget, more corruption, more power for you.
Yeah,
they've almost made warlords out of some of these generals, right? So to consolidate that under the party, I guess, has prevented some conflict. That being said, now you have ultimate servitude and no options for anything else except for them to listen to Xi Jinping. And that's dangerous in itself, because what Xi Jinping says as supreme commander of the military, and that goes.
Yeah, he's made himself supreme commander. Previously it was a different thing. The government body of the CCP and the People's Liberation Army were kind of two different organizations that would, obviously they deal with each other and they're part of the same country and all that, but they were actually separate. So what the CCP said could be vetoed by the PLA.
Right.
But it can no longer be like that.
No.
The Communist Party has, like it says over there, absolute leadership over. Imagine you have to teach children in school. This is one of the things. Children have to study in school.
Little
the
kids.
Chinese Communist Party should have absolute leadership over the People's Liberation Army.
7-year-olds.
Why should they learn that? Shouldn't this be behind closed doors? Why does this have to be out there? Why does it have to be a thing that it's on billboards and, like Xi Jinping thought everyone has to learn? It's ridiculous. It's insecurity, right?
It is. Number 12 is promoting the one country, two systems system for Hong Kong and Macau with a future of complete national reunification, and to follow the one China policy and the 1992 consensus for Taiwan. So again, he's made it doctrine that he's going to take back Taiwan.
Yeah, you got to take back Taiwan, Hong Kong and Macau.
And screw over Hong Kong.
Yeah,
and Macau.
I mean, I like how he says the one party two system, but then they don't actually adhere to it.
Within the same sentences, follow the one China policy.
And follow the one China policy. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Next one, establish a common destiny between Chinese people and other people around the world with a peaceful international environment.
Well, you're not following that one, Mr. Xi.
No.
Very well.
What's this common destiny? Maybe the common destiny is that they all have to be ruled by the CCP.
That sounds like it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, why else would you be infiltrating every Western democracy?
Yeah.
And censoring on behalf of them, right?
Yeah. And what's his last one?
Improve party discipline in the Chinese Communist Party. So that basically, actually not just basically, that means you follow Xi Jinping.
Yeah, I like that he has to think about these things. What we really need to do is improve party discipline in the Chinese Communist Party. And not only am I going to think about this, but I'm going to write books about it. And I'm going to make this like every kid has to learn this, and every person who works for the government has to take tests on this every day. And we're just going to have to put this out there.
Agreed. If you don't think that Xi Jinping is Chairman Mao 2.0, then you've lost.
The fact of the matter is that all of these so-called thoughts of his, is just crap anyway. It's really just...
Oh, it's lies and projection.
I mean, it could really just be a government policy. Why does it have to be his thought?
Well, because he sees himself as God.
But that's what I'm saying. This could just literally be the rules for the Communist Party, and that's it. But it's his thought to think about these things, And now everyone has to listen to his crappy thoughts.
Right.
At the end of the day, why we say the Chinese youth is ruined is because, first of all, their options for doing any kind of extracurricular activities
that could potentially open their mind,
is now being cut off.
Right.
No longer are we allowed to have foreign textbooks and things like that be taught, which is ridiculous. Think about that. Imagine you couldn't have a foreign textbook, in America. Imagine you couldn't read that Japanese textbook. No, it's not allowed anymore. Or whatever textbooks have been completely
it's 1984.
Yeah, no foreign influence is allowed. So it's cutting out all foreign influence. It's going to just turn these kids into mindless, stupid, nationalist drones.
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah, and on top of that, what they're going to have to do is study Xi Jinping's boring ass thoughts in his stupid mind, which are just rubbish things
He's a
about
pig farmer.
Marxism and communism and
According
you
to-
know, the
according to
party
him.
must be strong and all this. That's what the children of now, not even the future, the children
2021.
now in 2021 in China have to learn.
Yeah.
They're ruined.
Yeah.